Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a comparison between the Motorola Razr on the left and the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip on the right. Now, these are two very similar devices in that they are both folding smartphones launched in 2020, and they're also very close in price, $1,500 US and a little under $1,400 US for the Z Flip. Now, I give Motorola credit for being the only company other than Samsung to stick their foot into the folding realm. However, the Razr at $1,500, when it comes to its specifications and overall performance, it falls flat, and that's being polite. If you've watched my full review, then you already know what I think of this device. It just really doesn't deliver in any way other than the concept of a folding phone. And it does do that. I mean, the screen opens and you have a folding display, voila. And that's about all that it does, right? Yes, it has a larger display on the external 2.7 as opposed to the slightly over 1-inch display that we have on the Flip right there, which is really just a readout at best. But in every other area, the Z Flip is superior. So not only is the Z Flip less expensive than the Razr, but again, better than it in every way. Now, if you're wondering whether or not folding phones like these two are a fad, I say absolutely not. For if you're like me at all, then you already know the beauty of folding devices like these two is that as phones have progressed, technology has improved, and we've come to basically the full maturation we have today. Phones like the Note 10 Plus right here, which I love, best phone I have ever owned and enjoyed using. As much as I love it, it's just too ridiculously large. And I don't mean the display size, I mean the physical form factor. It's not just a matter of whether or not you are a large or small person, or if you have the biggest hands on earth or not. Let's get down to brass tacks, which is, can that thing fit in your pocket? And for years now, I have not had pants that my phones could actually fit in their front pockets. And if they did, it was uncomfortable and people could clearly see that my phone was happy to see them. Here come foldable devices like these, which give you all of the promise of delivering all of that flagship performance, but actually fitting comfortably in your clothing. And that is the beauty and the future of smartphone tech without any question. Now, the Razr at $1,500 does not deliver that promise. It actually does quite the opposite, which just delivers a nostalgic brand in the Razr form with everything that wouldn't get you excited about a $1,500 handset. I mean, it's mid-tier processor, 6 gigs of RAM. I mean, the Snapdragon 710 is fine, but that's all it is. 6 gigs of RAM, a 2,510 milliamp hour battery, 128 gigs of internal storage that is not expandable. Of course, there are no headphone jacks on either of these phones. It gives you a decent camera, with 4K capture for video, but that's pretty much it. No wireless charging, of course, no power share features. Really, the best thing it's got going for it is the larger, again, front display than the the Z Flip. The Z Flip, on the other hand, has a Snapdragon 855. The engineering is far superior. The interior 6.7-inch display is far superior. In addition to that, we have a 3,300 milliamp hour battery. So we actually have, not a flagship size battery, but flagship from a couple years ago and still decent enough that it will get you through a day, even though the Razr does a very good job considering how small its battery is. I still can't believe it has a 2,510 milliamp hour battery. That's like, so 5 years ago. It's just mind-numbing. The cameras on the Z Flip, definitely better. You get more cameras with the Z Flip, and they perform really in par or on par in line with flagship capability. You have wireless charging. You have 256 gigs of internal storage. You have 8 gigs of RAM. That's 2 more than the Razr. Now, am I saying that that 2 additional gigs of RAM makes this the better phone? No. Would I rather have 2 more gigs of RAM? Absolutely. From a design standpoint, the Z Flip is better in every way. No chin to deal with, which actually gets in the way, believe it or not, to actually swipe up to use the device. I mean, everything about the Z Flip is literally better. Didn't detect my face right there, but that likely has to do with lighting conditions. I'm going to unlock it. I'm no longer using the Razr as my daily driver. I'm now using the Z Flip, and that's because I had to go from one to the other. But I've spent enough time with both of these handsets to give you these full impressions. And the reality is that, yes, a bend, a fold is visible in the Z Flip's actual crease where the hinge is. It's less visible on the Motorola handset, but I will tell you right now, the Motorola handset, as I've said over and over, is inferior in every single way. There is just nothing about this phone that makes it something I can recommend. The Z Flip, on the other hand, this is the device to make foldables mainstream. It's been selling out nonstop. I have no idea what that count is at, but I will not be surprised if it's a ludicrous number, something that none of us are expecting, and that's because this really does accomplish exactly what I was talking about at the top of the video, which is giving me something that in terms of performance is right there with my Note 10 Plus. Yes, I have no S Pen. I miss that dearly right now. But in terms of processor, RAM, battery life, experience, by the way, not really acceptable that we're getting Android 9 here, but we do get Android 10, thank God, out of the box with the Z Flip. I mean, not to even get the latest software possible with a $1,500 phone is adding, just throwing salt on the wound. But as I was saying, with the Z Flip, I am getting nearly everything I expect in performance from my Note 10 Plus in a device that is actually pocketable. It is something I can take around without issue. Camera performance on the Note 10 Plus, a little bit better, but this is not a comparison to the Note 10 Plus. It's a comparison between these two. And the camera performance on the Z Flip destroys the Razr. We also have optical steady shot on the ultra-wide camera and with the 4K video, so there's stabilization. There's absolutely none with the Razr. So bear in mind, keep those things in your head when you think about, are these better? So just to recap, processor in the Razr, Snapdragon 710 versus the Snapdragon 855 Plus. Are they both competent? Yes. Is the 855 Plus current and more capable? Absolutely. 6 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM. 128 gigs of storage, 256. Remember, storage is not expandable in either of these. 25 10 milliamp hour battery versus a 3300 milliamp hour battery. Neither of those batteries are going to break any battery life record, but I don't need to tell you this is the performer in this group. Wireless charging. It's available here. It's not with the Razr. The Razr claims to be splash resistant. Do not get liquid near either of these. Never use a fingernail on either of these screens. Yes, Samsung claims that we have a layer of glass on the interior of this. I'm never going to test it. In fact, even cleaning these phones can be a little bit scary because, yes, dust can get inside of the phones, both of them. Samsung used some brushes inside, some fabric brushes. Some have argued that the hinge is better on the Razr, but the fact that the whole, display starts to look like a shower curtain is just unacceptable. Then you have, in addition, forgetting all the specs and the fact that I think there's just no way, there's nothing the Razr has on the Z Flip, you also have the fact that this can actually be used in what Samsung calls flex mode, which means, now, it's not all of the applications, it's not everything you're going to do, but you can actually use a form of split screen. So Samsung does have their own multitasking built into their overlay, their One UI. So I can have one app here and one app here, but then things like the actual camera are already programmed by Samsung to leverage the fact that this can be used as two displays, essentially. Motorola makes no practical use of the fact that it has a foldable display. So that's another thing that, Motorola is just completely leaning on nostalgia of Razr to sell this thing, and that's it. Whereas here, yeah, there's no Z Flip nostalgia. I know a lot of people are saying, well, flip phones in general are nostalgic. No, they're not. And I don't mean that I didn't use a flip phone for many years. I did. I don't miss that. This whole idea that it's satisfying to close it, that's cute for a few minutes. It actually can become a big pain in the ass if you're not a fan of it. But to me, that pain in the ass that we were able to get rid of with our current slate style phones, as I mentioned, when they got too big to fit in a pocket, I'm willing to make a compromise. And if that compromise is that I've got to open up my phone all the time, that's fine, as long as, again, I'm getting flagship internals in a package that actually now fits in my pocket. And again, that is what the Z Flip accomplishes, and that's what the Motorola Razr totally misses. Now, I do wish the Z Flip had a front display of similar size to that of the Razr. It would make this phone even better, but the fact remains there's enough good stuff going on with the Z Flip that I can recommend it at its nearly $1,400 price point. In fact, when I look at everything else coming out right now, the S20 Ultra base model being also $1,400 like the Z Flip, I don't know why on earth you would ever consider the S20 Ultra, even with its new cameras, over the Z Flip, because the Z Flip actually changes the game. And again, this isn't about a gimmick. This is about having a device that fits in your pocket, and might I add, with that fragile display, it's protected inside your pocket, which is something I do miss. I mean, we never had anything like this, but the fact that I know I can close this up and the screen isn't going to get scratched is reassuring. No question about it. And the same applies to the Razr, but the application of that screen in terms of engineering is just total garbage. No 5G, and that's part of the Z Flip's pricing, is that had they made that a 5G handset, we'd definitely be looking at a more expensive device. Both of these phones are fingerprint magnets, but again, only one of them can actually find its way into a flagship conversation, and that is the Z Flip. And this isn't about me liking Samsung, even though I am a Note 10 Plus user, and I've been a Note user for many years. This is just about the reality of what these phones are capable of, both on the inside and the outside. And Samsung really, in my opinion, has made the argument for consumers that weren't even thinking about what I've said I've been looking for years. They've made it a reality here. Do things still need to be improved? Sure. I mean, I even feel that the Razr, with its plastic and metal construction as opposed to the glass and metal that we have here, glass and aluminum really, the Razr feels more solid. But it's really garbage compared to this phone in every regard. Processor, RAM, storage, cameras, battery life, wireless charging. What the hell was Lenovo thinking? Other than that stupid Americans would be nostalgic about the retro. Outside of nostalgia, I can't imagine what Motorola was thinking when they slapped this piece of crap together. This isn't even lipstick on a pig, okay? This should be a $500 phone. And I mean that because, I can't even say that they spent money on R&D and engineering, because this seems like the laziest, least inventive application of a folding screen that one could ever imagine. So again, I hope they go back to the drawing board and they bring out something like the Z Flip in the form of the Razr. I think that would actually sell, because the Z Flip has proven that folding displays have a place in the market. If you make a quality product, which Samsung absolutely did here, people will buy it. And I'm still very much on the fence as to whether or not this is actually going to become my daily driver. I didn't plan on it. Thought it would become the fiance's daily driver, but she needs that S Pen more than I do. And that means that, if I'm falling for the Z Flip, which I might very well be, then my Note 10 Plus may be biting the dust. And look, my Note 10 Plus outperforms this phone, but this phone fits comfortably in my pocket, and there is something incredibly important to be said for that. If at the end of the day, the only thing I'm really giving up is my S Pen. And of course, I will do my, you'll be seeing my full review of the Z Flip as well, and I likely will compare it to my Note 10 Plus. But at the end of the day, foldable devices like this are what need to be compared to each other. The assumption should be that they can compete with full slab phones like the S20 Ultra or the S20 line, but they definitely shouldn't underperform it in every way like the Razr does. And that much, pretty much rounds things out. So if you're considering these two phones, which I would understand why, they're cool. That they've got. They are absolutely cool. The one thing I will remind you of is that, the Z Flip is the way to go. And the Razr Blade, on the other hand, just run away from that phone. Run away from the Razr Blade. Stay away from it. It is essentially, toxic. Cute, but toxic. This phone, on the other hand, it's a folding flagship at a price that I think also is in the right sphere. And people who think the price is too much, they forget that folding displays are not as inexpensive as traditional displays that you get on slates, like all the flagships. I mean, those are a dime a dozen. These folding displays are not inexpensive yet. When that time comes, yes, then the Z Flip, maybe in its third generation, will be a flagship phone for under $1,000. But right now, if you want the pleasure of having flagship capability in a folding device, $1,400 on the Z Flip is a solid investment. And I'm not worried about either of these, that they're going to fall apart, but there's no question the construction of the actual internal screen of the 6.7-inch OLED that's employed here is far better. I mean, it's a finished product. It looks right. Even though there's a fold that you can feel and see at certain angles, this phone looks and feels the way it should. The Motorola, on the other hand, it's just a box of rocks. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.